Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. And today we are going to have an interview with a gentleman whose name is Alan Katz. You should have heard of him, but you probably didn't. He has written a book called Oops, which is subtitled Poems by Alan Katz, Drawings by Edward Koren, who hangs out at the New Yorker, and it's published by Simon & Schuster.
That's correct.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
You know, it's hard for me to know where to start with you because you are so many things. There is a self-description on your website which says the best way to describe a grown man, but what's the best way to describe a grown man who thinks like a 6-year-old boy? That's the problem my wife faces every time she has to introduce me. Hi, I'm Alan Katz.
Well, that's true. You know, if a 6-year-old boy is brilliant, they call him a child prodigy. Mm-hmm. But what happens when you have a man who acts like and thinks like a 6-year-old boy? And I think that's me.
Well, I mean, the reason why you can say that about yourself is that the book that you've written that has sold the best is called Take Me Out of the Bathtub.
Right.
And is that one of the Silly Dilly books?
Exactly, Silly Dilly songs. I had been writing many of the songs for the Rosie O'Donnell show. Every day she would sing songs about her bunions or about the brand new flavor of M&M she was so excited about or something that happened in her personal life. And I had 2 kids back then. I was with the show for 5 years. And my kids said, how about writing some songs for us? And it was very easy to take me out to the ball game and turn that into Take Me Out of the Bathtub. And there are other songs in there like Stinky, Stinky Diaper Change to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
That's one of my faves right
Well,
there.
thank you. I think that's the hit in the book. Kind of in the spirit of Alan Sherman, gentle parodies that are kid-friendly and easy to sing.
Okay. Now, there are other books in your in your past, and I think if we probably just mention the titles and describe them briefly, people will get to understand what's going on here. This is your oeuvre, as they say on the high literary shows. Okay. This is your oeuvre. Okay, Take Me Out of the Bathtub was followed somewhat, I don't know, fast, slow, by I'm Still in the Bathtub.
Exactly. I'm Still Here in the Bathtub. And those were brand new Silly Dilly songs. There are 14 songs in each book.
Now, for those who feel that we're just fooling around here, the man is also educational in his oeuvre. Was one of his titles is Are You Quite Polite?
Exactly. I think manners for kids is right up there with anything else in the educational process. And Are You Quite Polite is full of songs about writing thank yous and being on time and saying excuse me and all the other stuff that I'd like kids to say.
And then you're very conscious too that children should use good, acceptable language.
Absolutely.
And you wrote a book to condemn certain words.
I did. Oh, yes, I did.
Which was called Don't Say That Word.
Don't Say That Word. It's the story of a kid who comes home from school, and in his in being anxious to tell mom what happened all day, it sets up a lot of interesting the verses set up a lot of interesting language, and right before he gets to the meaty word, the word that mom wouldn't want him to say, she yells, "Don't say that word." And the kids reading it know what the words are, but hopefully they'll never say them. So I am interested in not only politeness, but proper use of language.
When you're out among your primary audience, they really take on that book very well.
They do take on that book because if mom says what happened in school today and he says in art everybody got inky, but mom, that was only the start because Richie then made the room stinky by blasting a really big. Before he can say the word that would have rhymed with art, mom yells, "Don't say that word." Well, the kids know what that word is, but I am encouraging them to think about it, but say don't say that word and never actually say the word.
Stinky thinking.
Yes.
Gross games and brain teasers.
Right. There are 2 workbooks. There's Stinky Thinking 1 and Stinky Thinking number 2. And
Stinky Thinking number
2. It's not a steaming pile of number 2, but it's number 2.
Number 2.
And those are illustrated workbooks. As I said, I have 4 kids, and they'd come home with worksheets that say if Alan has 2 buttons and Jim has 2 buttons, how many buttons do they have altogether? They didn't care about the buttons. They didn't care about the math. They didn't care about Alan and Jim. So I did worksheets. There are worksheets in there that are math and science and logic problems, but they're based on dirty diapers and dirty tissues and matching the rash-filled rear ends of all the toddlers in a nursery school, and you have to find the two that match. And it's logic, it's learning, but it's stinky. Kids seem to love it, and they're learning from it.
Through this critical review of your
Yes.
we have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are a man, as you say of yourself,
Yes.
that you've majored in silliness for more than 25 years.
Didn't take long to get there, did it?
But actual books, you've only been writing them for, what, 10 years?
About 10 years.
Oh, my goodness.
And only reading them for slightly more than that.
Well, Oops, Poems by Alan Katz, that's the new one. And it's the latest addition to the Oeuvre, and it is, and also to what I think of as the Alan Katz franchise. Stay tuned for more Oops.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Alan Katz, the franchise, he's here. He's talking about his latest book, Oops, Poems by Alan Katz, Drawings by Edward Koren. It is a Margaret K. McElderry book. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. She's
I
wonderful.
think
Division of
that's
Simon &
important.
Schuster.
Yes.
And most of my books have been with them, and they're wonderful people and very
This
proud.
this actually is your first book of poetry.
Right.
I mean, you've done a lot with rhymes and stuff, but this is your first book. How did you decide to do that?
Well, actually, after having done 5 or 6 songbooks, and there are some new ones on the way in that franchise as well, the wonderful editor, Emma Dryden, who's been at Simon & Schuster for many years, said, how about doing some poetry? And I said, I don't know if I could do that and not stick to the lyrics of songs and write song parodies. And she said, come on, try. And I'll always be indebted to her because I never would have tried. I was someone who didn't pay much attention to poetry. And I tried, and she liked it, and I love doing it. And that's 100 poems that made up this collection. And we're now working on the sequel to be called Uh-Oh. When you follow up Oops, I think Uh-Oh is a perfect title.
Yeah, I think it's a good follow-up.
And what's nice is if you drop the book, you actually say the title of it as you drop it. So
Excellent.
the third one will probably be, hey, pick that up for me, will you? But we've been having a good time. And Ed Koren, who, as you mentioned, is from The New Yorker.
Yeah.
I think he's done over 1,000 cartoons for them. And he's as close to a legendary illustrator as you want to get.
You're right.
And although I didn't meet him until after the book was completed, I was just in awe of his work and remain in awe of his work. And he's as kind as he is talented.
That's great. Now, I think it's important that we now, as they say, go to the poems.
Well, sure.
And the first one I think that you should share is the title poem.
All right. Well, thank you. The book is really made up of poems that are part of a kid's life, whether it's school or behavior or friendship or things like that. And in this one, there's the illustration that spreads across 2 pages is one of Ed Koren's greatest in the book, I think, where the kid has destroyed the living room. There's no question this living room is in a shambles. And, I'm not the kind of dad, and I don't have the kind of kids or spouse where my wife says, wait till dad gets home. We're not one of those sitcom families.
Yeah.
But there are families like that. We know them, and we try to stay away from them. But in this poem, Oops, if I can read it for you,
Please.
The kid says, I did something bad and Mom's angry. She says that she's going to tell Dad. It's been a bad week for behavior. This problem's the 3rd that I've had. And Daddy will surely believe her. It's a case we've already proved. So I'm putting a sign on the front door. Hiya, Dad, don't come in because we've moved. So
That's an excellent solution.
Absolutely.
It's very, very creative.
I would have done that.
Yeah. There's one the one that opens the book. Mm-hmm. I like. It's called Whoosh.
Whoosh, one of my favorites in the book. And very simply, the wind is blowing quite a breeze. The wind is blowing on my knees. The wind is blowing its spring dance. It tells me I forgot my pants. Just a little wordplay.
Common problem.
It happens. It does happen.
Common problem. On page 18,
Yes.
I believe.
Good thing the pages are numbered.
It's me. A poem called
Me.
Me.
Absolutely. Kind of a sweet poem. The book is dedicated to my wife, but really it's inspired by our 4 kids. And this one's about one of them. I have superpowers. I can see through walls. I can jump 50 feet into the air when emergency duty calls. I can swim the English Channel and scale Mount Everest in an hour or 2. I can save the world with a wave of my hand. But first, would you please tie my shoe?
You got to talk about the illustration.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a kid in a superhero getup with a superhero mask. And mom is reading the paper.
And boots.
And boots, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lace that extends out from page 19 all the way back to page 18 with a cat kind of playing with it. So inventive, so creative, and so marvelous.
Now, I know from experience, I think, that one of your favorite songs, one of your favorite poems is one called Shower.
Shower, yeah.
Page 54.
Kids seem to like that. There's a lot of wordplay in this book, and it's been pointed out to me that it's not just a book to be read out loud. It's not just a book for kids to share in class, but there are a lot of poems that have wordplay where you really do have to read them to get the jokes. Mm-hmm. This is one where I couldn't find a word in my rhyming dictionary, so I made it up. It goes like this. I'm going to wash behind each ear because I use them both to hear. I'm going to wash around my nose because it breathes. It also blows. But I won't wash my belly button because, you see, it don't do nothing. Kids seem to like that.
They like that. Now, there's one on page 66 that has to do with cars.
I actually wrote that one. I know exactly the one you're talking about. I wrote that the day we got a new minivan, and we kind of read the Four Kids the Riot Act about keeping the car clean. Didn't last. There are substances on there that I don't know if you could even test what they are anymore. But there's a picture here of a kid with a giant ice cream cone in front of the car. And the kid says, Mom got a new car, so no drinks in the back, no markers, no crayons, and no crunchy snack. No ice cream, no pudding, no putty, no clay, no feet on the seats, and no silly horse play. No toys filled with liquid and nothing with chalk. Good luck with the car, Mom, but I'd rather walk.
Here's a short one.
Okay.
Just call me Maggie. I'm Margaret McPherson McNally McBride. I'm named for a cousin on my father's side, and also an aunt who was loved by my mother as well as some guy who worked for Grandpa's brother. I'm really surprised at what my parents did if they liked all those names. Should have had one more kid.
Very nicely read. Thank you.
Well, when you have franchise status, you must keep bringing new things to the public.
Well, thank you.
So what's Alan Katz up to next?
Well, more songbooks. There is a...
Stay tuned.
I will.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast. Oops. Poems by Alan Katz is what we've been talking about and having a good time. This stuff is great. And I just, your poetry is good, and Koren's drawings, of course, are out of this world.
Well, thank you.
It's a great combination, and it's a book that people should buy several copies of. Otherwise, people will pick it up in their house and take it home, and you'll be very upset.
Yeah, that's well said. Thank you very much.
And I'm here to tell everybody out there that Alan's not stopping.
No.
There is another book just around the corner, which is called On Top of the Potty and Other Get Up and Go Songs.
Exactly. It's a book of, just like the Silly Dilly books, illustrated by the wonderful Dave Catro. I don't know if we said that before.
No, we haven't.
An incredible, inventive, wonderful illustrator who does colorful work that is incomparable. And he's done all the Silly Dilly books so far and is continuing with On Top of the Potty. And there's songs to encourage proper hygiene when it comes to potty training and hand washing and all that.
And is one of those songs On Top of Old Smoky?
It is. The title song is to the tune of On Top of Old Smoky. Mm-hmm. And there's a song in there to the tune of If You're Happy and You Know It. And and listen, if I can get a whole generation to be reading, singing, and
this is very good for grandparents, those kinds of songs.
Absolutely. Well, I'm predicting it's going to be the number 1 and number 2 book in America. So
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. And then there's another Silly Dilly book coming out. And this one has the not too elegant title, Smelly Locker.
Right. Well, that's part of being a student, is having a locker that hasn't been cleaned out in months and months. And the title song in there is to the tune of Frere Jacques. It practically writes itself. Smelly Locker, Smelly Locker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's songs about getting a hall pass and about the lunch lady and vacations and taking tests and everything that goes on in an elementary school. I'm actually very proud of that one. And as I've been visiting schools and sharing some of that, that seems like it's going to be quite popular.
And I think there's one more that's not on my
There's
sheet.
another one that Mr. Catro is just finishing right now called Going, Going, Gone, and that's Silly Dilly Sports Songs, which will be about a year from now.
Go.
Well, that's what happens in baseball, Going, Going, Gone. And actually the illustration, the cover illustration, which I just saw the other day, is the cutout of a kid having gone through the fence to try to catch a ball. It's adorable. And after that,
what's the song to Going, Going, Gone?
There actually, that's just the title of the book. There actually is no song for that one, but there is a song about baseball and a song about being in the bleachers, and fishing and hockey and soccer and all those other good sports.
The whole sports scene is captured
absolutely
in the smelly locker.
No question. No, in Going, Going, Gone.
In Going, Going, Gone, not in the smelly locker. You know, one of the things you spend a lot of time doing is going to schools. And why do you do that?
Well, it's a privilege. It really is a privilege to be an author and a privilege to be able to share my joy of writing and words. And when I'm invited to schools, and I've been touring some of the schools in San Francisco and San Jose the last few days, to get a chance to find out what kids are reading and find out what they enjoy and to encourage them to read and write. You know, I always say, you know, if I were a doctor, you go to a school, you say, someday you can be a doctor. Well, you know what? You're a writer right now. I'm talking to you as an author who has published books that you can buy in the store, but that doesn't mean you're not writers and you're not authors and you're not illustrators. And so many kids raise their hand when I say how many people have written books or keep journals or diaries. So important. The more we can get kids reading, the more we can get kids writing. You know, I want them to laugh. I want them to have a good time. In some cases, my poetry might be the first exposure to poetry for them. That's a real privilege. And I always tell them, laugh at my poems, then run to your library and see what else there is that you might like. You might like serious books. You don't have to read funny stuff. You don't have to write funny stuff. But it's a real privilege to be somebody who can reach out to kids that way. And I do it with my own kids, and I'm honored to be able to do it in schools throughout the country.
Now, you're delivering, if you will, a serious message, but in a very humorous way.
Well, sure.
Do other writers not like you for that?
Oh, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't like me for that. I do. There are times. I mean, there are other reasons not to like me.
Yeah,
but
well,
we don't have that much time.
Those.
No, but there are times where I'll do a poetry blast. I've been invited to some very high-profile poetry blasts where there are very serious poets writing about the human condition, and then I come in and read a poem like Whoosh about forgetting my pants. It changes the mood. They might not be that happy that I've turned the session into a laugh session, hopefully, but. Listen, anyone who writes for children has not only the opportunity but the obligation to help encourage them to read and write as much as they can. And I take that very seriously. As much as I write funny stuff, I like to be seriously funny and seriously silly. And
if anybody objects,
yes,
look up those writers who talk about the wonderful chemicals released by the brain.
Sure.
When you laugh.
I must have a brain somewhere in there.
Absolutely. Well, Alan Katz has been here. I think he's a franchise.
Well, that's
I think he's wonderful. His newest book is Oops. It's poetry with illustrations by Edward Koren. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.